On this Wednesday night, the dollar nosedives.
The main driver, the Canadian economy, is just not doing as well as the U.S. economy.
The financial fallout, fueled in part by Trudeau's political turmoil and Trump's tariff threat. Troller-in-chief, the U.S. president-elect's latest social media taunts.
He's still mad at Trudeau for ABC, XYZ, and he's going to poke it as many times as he can.
And fact-checking Trump's claims about the U.S. subsidizing Canada. Plus, the Order of Canada. The new appointees include a woman who fought for decades against discrimination.
It took 38 years before we got an apology.
We'll speak with the former Canadian soldier, once labeled a threat to the country because of her sexuality.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. A week of political and financial uncertainty has sent Canada's dollar reeling, dropping to levels not seen since the darkest days of the pandemic back in March 2020. The Canadian currency took a tumble as the U.S. Federal Reserve recalibrated its outlook for the American economy. The loonie had already started the day below 70 cents U.S., then dipped another 2/3 of a cent in value as U.S. policymakers cut interest rates by a quarter point. The question now, how low can it go? And we're joined now by Global's business correspondent, Anne Gaviola. So, Anne, what's driving the dollar's nosedive?
Jeff, I want to separate the noise from what's really weighing on our loonie. So that noise comes in the form of political turmoil and uncertainty over the future of our federal government. That caused the loonie to take a small tumble yesterday. There's also the threat of Trump tariffs. That's also weighing on our currency. Basically, investors don't like uncertainty, and these things are making them nervous. But the overarching factor, which is the reason our dollar has floundered against the American dollar for months, is our economy is weaker. It is the reason our central bank has been more aggressively cutting interest rates. So, in fact, have a look at this chart of the Bank of Canada's key policy rate and the U.S. Federal Reserve's moving in lockstep and then diverging post-pandemic. It's a tale of two economies. Today, the U.S. Federal Reserve, as you mentioned, slashed interest rates by a quarter point and announced it's likely to cut rates only twice next year, not 4 times as previously expected. So the loonie took all of that on the chin.
All right, so it sounds like the loonie could stay low for the foreseeable future. What's been the reaction to all of this?
Well, markets anticipate pro-growth policies under Trump, including less regulation and taxes, but also inflationary because of protectionism, which will mean keeping U.S. interest rates higher. In fact, today I spoke with a founder of a foreign exchange service who says their phones have been ringing off the hook. They're dealing with businesses looking to cash in their U.S. dollars for the Canadian equivalent. They're also talking to snowbirds who fret about their Canadian dollars not stretching as far. One tip they offered is to shop on this side of the border for deals.
You might be able to take advantage of some business owners being slow to increase their prices because they're just so busy, or they have excess inventory that they had from before at better, Canadian dollar rates of several months ago. So you might be able to take advantage of that before price increases come in the next several weeks or months.
So bottom line, there are winners and losers in all of this. And by the way, to answer your question, economists I've spoken to say we could see a further weakening of our dollar. Jeff?
All right, so much for those cross-border Christmas shopping plans. Anne Gaviola in Toronto. Thanks, Anne. And as Anne mentioned, one factor fueling that lower loonie is Trump's tariff threat. And today, the president-elect ramped up his rhetoric with another overnight social media swipe. Trump claimed again that the U.S. is subsidizing Canada and that many Canadians want to join the United States. Mackenzie Gray has a reality check on the taunts and the tariffs.
While he says he's America first, Donald Trump just can't stop thinking about Canada. His latest social media post dropping at 3:23 a.m., trolling once again, saying many Canadians want Canada to become the 51st state.
Have a wonderful evening.
Needling Justin Trudeau as he languishes in a weak political position.
Trump never forgets a slight. He's still mad at Trudeau for ABC, XYZ, and he's going to poke it.
Only 13% of Canadians say they want to join the U.S., according to a Leger poll. That number jumps to 1 in 5 when you ask Conservative Party supporters. That's not the only thing Trump's post got wrong. He asked, no one can answer why we subsidize Canada to the tune of over $100 million a year. But Trump can't seem to keep his story straight.
We're subsidizing Canada to the tune of over $100 billion a year.
In reality, the U.S. isn't subsidizing Canada. Trump seemingly referencing trade deficits. Canada does sell more to the U.S. than it buys, but Alberta's premier points out it's because Canada, especially Alberta, sends billions of raw materials to the U.S., specifically $124 billion in oil exports.
A subsidy implies that something for nothing, but we are getting tangible things that Americans want and need.
Reiterating the fact should be at the heart of Canada's strategy to take on Trump's proposed 25% tariff, according to Canada's former ambassador to Washington.
This is all contrary to the law, which we should not dismiss too lightly. We have a signed, sealed, and delivered agreement under NAFTA, now called CUSMA, saying that we are not allowed to do any of these things.
Frank McKenna's optimistic Canada can dodge a 25% tariff when Trump becomes president, but he doesn't think Canada will be tariff-free, Jeff, saying a 10% tax on all goods going to the States is a likely outcome.
All right, Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa. Thanks, Mac. Canadians are waiting to see how Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will respond, facing mounting pressure to step down or call an early election. A senior Liberal says Trudeau is considering possible paths forward, including proroguing Parliament to allow for a Liberal leadership race. And after several high-profile departures, Trudeau's cabinet is also due for a shakeup. Our chief political correspondent, David Akin, walks us through that tricky task. David.
Well, Jeff, the first thing to know is that many Liberal sources believe this cabinet shuffle is imminent. It could be as soon as Thursday or Friday. And the choices the PM makes, they are going to be hugely important. Justin Trudeau's picks to head up public safety, foreign affairs, trade, they will all play central roles when Donald Trump takes over. But the PM will start this cabinet making with a more pedestrian challenge.
From coast to coast to coast.
Prime ministers always want to have at least one face around the cabinet table from every province. And a month ago, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had one from all but the North and from Saskatchewan, where there are no Liberal MPs. But then, Randy Boissonnault resigned from cabinet, leaving Alberta with no minister. Manitoba's only minister, Dan Vandal, and Nova Scotia's only minister, Sean Fraser, have both announced they will not run again. So the PM will need new regional ministers for 3 provinces. Liberal MPs believe it will be Cody Blois in Nova Scotia and Terry Duguid in Manitoba. In Alberta, there is only one other Liberal MP, George Chahal, but he is one of those Liberals who want Trudeau to quit. So it seems almost certain Alberta will join Saskatchewan and Nunavut, whose only MP is a New Democrat, without cabinet representation, unless Trudeau makes the unlikely choice of appointing a senator to cabinet.
I, Dominic LeBlanc.
Then there's ministers with multiple jobs. Dominic LeBlanc just took Chrystia Freeland's finance job, but he still holds public safety and one other job. The PM will need someone new at public safety. Same with Anita Anand and Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor, who, between them, hold 4 big jobs: Treasury Board, Transport, Veterans Affairs, and Employment. Trudeau will surely split up all those responsibilities. And of course, Trudeau has committed to a gender-balanced cabinet. And any cabinet shuffle now goes out the window if, after Christmas, Trudeau decides to resign. That's because some ministers, Anand, Melanie Joly, and so on, may wish to seek the top job. And by convention, they cannot run for leader while serving in cabinet. So as you can see, Jeff, this could be a very tangled mess.
Glad you're there to untangle it for us. David Akin in Ottawa. Thanks. A Montreal synagogue was hit by a suspected arson attack overnight. It's the second time that building has been targeted in just over a year. According to police, Jewish people were by far the most targeted religious group in Canada last year, despite representing just over 1% of the population. Phil Carpenter reports on fears the community could be targeted again over the holidays.
Members of a synagogue in a Montreal suburb are stunned.
We're concerned. I mean, this is well planned.
According to Montreal police, someone called 911 about a fire at the Beth Tikva synagogue in the Montreal suburb of Dollard-des-Ormeaux. Police saw fire at the entrance of the building but managed to put out the blaze. They found an incendiary device.
And also they had information from witnesses who told them that one suspect was seen leaving rapidly the incident.
Staff say the fire remained mainly in the vestibule thanks to a second set of doors.
The fire caused tremendous amount of smoke damage inside the vestibule.
Mid-morning, the smell of fuel was still evident at the entrance. But that wasn't the only attack Wednesday. At around 7 a.m., police noticed that the Federation CJA building across the street from the synagogue had 2 windows broken. Synagogue staff are convinced they are hate crimes.
They didn't attack a 7-Eleven or a food store or a chain store. They attacked a synagogue, a Jewish house of worship.
In November last year, both the synagogue and the CJA building were firebombed. There has been no arrest.
We have a saying in Jewish, it says it's a Meshigene Welt, it's a crazy world. And that it is, it's like, it's enough.
Wednesday's incidents are the latest in a string of attacks against Jewish institutions in the city since last year, including at least 3 shootings on Jewish school buildings.
It says to me that the mayor has failed to remove the atmosphere of hate.
Montreal Mayor Valérie Plante posted on social media that anti-Semitic acts are criminal acts. Meanwhile, those at the synagogue vowed that this recent incident will not deter them.
So we stood in the cold street corner with the damage, and we did many prayers.
The police, arson and hate crimes units are investigating. Phil Carpenter, Global News, Dolores des Ormeaux.
Russia says it has arrested an Uzbek man in connection with the killing of a top Russian general in Moscow. Investigators say Ukraine hired the suspect to plant the bomb that killed Igor Kirillov yesterday. He's believed to be the most senior Russian military officer assassinated by Ukraine inside of Russia. Redmond Shannon reports on the fallout.
The man the Kremlin says is under arrest for the killing of one of its top generals. In this video, the Uzbek man says he was offered $100,000 by Ukraine and permission to move to a European country if he assassinated Igor Kirillov. The head of Russia's Radiation, Chemical and Biological Protection Forces was killed Tuesday by a bomb apparently hidden inside an e-scooter outside his apartment building. Russian authorities say other suspects are being identified. The Kremlin's foreign ministry says it will raise Kirillov's killing at the UN Security Council Friday. In Poland, more diplomatic moves by the West in support of Ukraine. Canadian Defence Minister Bill Blair meeting his Polish counterpart.
We believe that struggle is also necessary to maintain peace and security and stability for all of Europe.
Further west in Brussels, Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky meeting European and NATO leadership. The impending presidency of Donald Trump and his desire for a peace deal written between the lines of every statement.
High on the agenda is to make sure that the president, his team, Ukraine are in the best possible position one day when they decide so to start the peace talks.
Zelensky now saying openly that Ukraine cannot recover Russian-occupied land by force.
A very good opportunity to speak about security guarantees for Ukraine for today and for tomorrow.
Earlier Wednesday, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer spoke with Trump. Starmer's office says he reiterated to the US President-elect the need for allies to stand together with Ukraine. Jeff?
Redmond Shannon in London. Thanks, Red. License revoked. Coming up, our investigation into an Ontario dentist convicted for helping Iran dodge sanctions. This beloved Canadian tugboat is in some deep water. The Theodore II is partially submerged in an Ontario port after it began taking on water last night. The life-sized replica of the children's character Theodore tugboat was built in Nova Scotia 24 years ago. It was sold and moved to Ontario a few years ago. Its owner says a team of experts is now devising a plan to salvage it. And to an update now on a Global News exclusive we first reported in October. Our investigation revealed a dentist practicing in Ontario had changed his name after being convicted in the U.S. for helping Iran evade sanctions. Now, as Nathaniel Dove reports, that dentist has been stripped of his license.
The crowd shouts death to America as the country's leader says Israel will be eradicated. Canada and allies sanctioned Iran to punish it for building weapons of mass destruction and violating human rights. But between 2015 and 2017, Arash Youssefagian and his brother Amin shipped more than $100,000 American of sensitive manufacturing equipment from the U.S. to Iran. Court documents state Arash, on the right, and his brother were arrested. In 2021, pleaded guilty and sentenced to time served. Just months later, while in Canada and still on parole, they applied to change their names, and the Ontario government allowed it. Arash, as Arash Cohen, became a dentist. But last month, the Royal College of Dental Surgeons of Ontario, the regulatory body, cancelled his certificate. In a statement, a spokesperson wrote it requires that any applicant's past and present conduct afford reasonable grounds for the belief that the applicant will practice dentistry with decency, integrity, and honesty, and that an applicant will not have satisfied requirements if they made a false or misleading statement about their application. Arash did not respond to a request for comment, though he previously said he had already paid his dues. He is a naturalized Canadian citizen, but his brother Amin is not. The Canada Border Services Agency scheduled a hearing in February to determine whether Amin should be deported. The CBSA argues his previous actions increased the threat to Canada. Jeff?
Nathaniel Dove in Toronto. Thanks. Stuck in space. Still ahead, more bad news for a pair of astronauts stranded for months. "14 people are now confirmed dead from that powerful earthquake that struck Vanuatu on Tuesday. That number is expected to rise. More than 200 others have been injured. The magnitude 7.3 quake destroyed several buildings in the capital and shut down phone and internet service. It also destroyed 2 reservoirs. As of now, the city has no water. Several countries, including China and the U.S., are sending emergency aid. NASA is pushing back the return date again for 2 astronauts stuck in space for more than 6 months. The mission for Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams has been extended until at least March. A crew was supposed to relieve them in February, but SpaceX now needs more time to prepare the brand new capsule for flight. In June, Wilmore and Williams piloted the first crewed test flight of Boeing's Starliner spacecraft. That trip was supposed to last about a week. Multiple issues and safety concerns have delayed their return. Kicked out of the Canadian Forces decades ago because of her sexual orientation. Up next, how one woman's advocacy earned her one of Canada's highest honors. Welcome back. Governor General Mary Simon released this year's list of appointees to the Order of Canada, and it includes a household name from the silver screen.
Where to next?
Well, I thought we'd eliminate sick kids.
Oh, dude, that's so up.
No. We're eliminating the sickness by encouraging people to donate.
Deadpool movie star Ryan Reynolds was recognized for both his on-screen performance and his off-screen contributions to causes such as Toronto's Sick Kids Foundation. This year will see 88 new appointments to one of this country's highest honors, including Holocaust survivor and educator Mariette Duduc and LGBTQ2+ advocate Diane Pitre. During the Cold War, she was among the thousands kicked out of the Canadian government and military because of their sexuality. And Diane Pitre joins us now from New Brunswick. Hi, Diane. Thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations. What was your reaction when you heard the news?
Well, it's a bit surreal or overwhelmed. I was told a bit in advance that I was getting it, but it, I guess, wasn't sinking in because it's such an honor. And I'm in shock. I'm still in shock.
And this award marks the culmination of your decades-long fight against discrimination. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your story.
Well, I joined the military in the end of the 1970s, and a childhood dream, following in the footsteps of my uncles. And then one day I was told that to see SIUs, because which is the military police, because suspicion of being an homosexual. And I went under investigation, which lasted about 2.5 years off and on. And I was released in 1980 as a threat to the country.
And of course, you weren't the only one targeted in what's now known as the Purge. What was that period like for you?
We refer to it also as a witch hunt. And they would hook you up to this machine, and depending on your reaction to certain picture, They would look at your eyes and that would determine if you were an homosexual. It made no sense. I was ashamed. I know I wasn't out because it was the 1970s and people weren't out at that time. Maybe some were, not myself. But I couldn't understand why I was a threat to my country. I didn't even know my sexuality at the time. I had an experience and that's what it was. And it was, I was told I was a disgrace to the uniform by one of my captain. And I couldn't believe why Canada would treat me like that. So I needed to fight. And I started to write letters to members of parliament for an apology, and which lasted about 38 years. And finally, in 2017, we got our apology from Prime Minister Trudeau.
And what does this award mean for you and for others who were involved in that fight?
It's an amazing recognition. And I remember in all my civilian life, I would say, it's too bad that I never got a medal. It's gotta win what would you wish for, because it's a pretty big medal with laws of honor. But it's surreal for me. I never in my wildest dream. But at the end, I didn't do this all by myself. I started alone, but with a group of people, and it's a big teamwork here.
Well, congratulations again, and thank you so much for joining us. That is Diane Pitre, one of the newest appointees to the Order of Canada.
Thank you for the interview. I appreciate it.
And that is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada, the holiday lights at Casa Loma in Toronto. Thanks for watching. Carolyn Jarvis will be at the anchor desk tomorrow. Have a great night.